Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Library. It's lovely to have you here tonight. Before we begin, I'd love to know where in the world you are listening from. Perhaps you're curled up in a quiet bedroom, settling into a cozy couch with a warm blanket. Or maybe you're on a peaceful evening walk as the day winds down. Wherever you are, I hope you're comfortable, safe, and ready to gently settle into thought. If you enjoy these relaxing explorations and would like to hear more, a like and subscribe really helps this sleepy little channel along. And to those of you already subscribed, thank you. Truly, your support means more than you know. Tonight, we're going to explore something quite wonderful and deeply personal. The human brain, that 3-pound universe nestled inside your skull, with its billions of neurons forming connections more numerous than the stars in the Milky Way galaxy itself. We'll wander through the fascinating science of how you can nurture this remarkable organ, how you can help it grow stronger, more resilient, and more vibrant throughout your entire life. And I promise to keep things gentle and soothing, so that if sleep finds you along the way, that's perfectly fine. The knowledge will still be there when you wake. So, let's begin, shall we? Let's explore the beautiful science of improving brain function, one gentle discovery at a time. Think of your brain for a moment. Right now, as you listen to these words, billions of neurons are firing in intricate patterns, creating the experience of consciousness, of understanding, of being you. These neurons, these tiny cells that make up the substance of thought itself, are constantly communicating with each other through electrical and chemical signals. Every thought you have, every memory you recall, every decision you make, emerges from this vast network of connections. The human brain contains approximately 86 billion neurons. That's roughly the same number as there are stars in the Milky Way galaxy. But what's even more astounding is that each neuron can form thousands of connections with other neurons, creating a network of such complexity that it defies complete understanding. If you were to count all the possible connections in a single human brain, one per second, it would take you millions of years to finish. The number of possible neural configurations in your brain exceeds the number of atoms in the known universe. This extraordinary organ, weighing about 3 pounds, represents only 2% of your body weight, yet it consumes roughly 20% of your body's energy. Even when you're resting, even when you're asleep, your brain is working continuously, maintaining your heartbeat, regulating your breathing, processing sensory information, consolidating memories, and engaging in countless other activities that keep you alive and functioning. For most of human history, the brain was a mystery wrapped in an enigma. Ancient civilizations had various theories about its function. Some believed the heart was the seat of intelligence and emotion, relegating the brain to a secondary role. The ancient Egyptians, when preparing bodies for mummification, would carefully preserve the heart, but would discard the brain, pulling it out through the nostrils and throwing it away. They simply didn't recognize its importance. The ancient Greeks had different ideas. Hippocrates, often called the father of medicine, correctly identified the brain as the seat of intelligence and emotion. But not all Greek philosophers agreed. Aristotle, one of the greatest minds of the ancient world, believed that the heart was the center of thought and that the brain was merely a cooling system for the body, like a radiator keeping the body from overheating. It wasn't until the Renaissance period that scientists began to seriously study the brain's structure. Leonardo da Vinci made detailed anatomical drawings of the brain, though he still believed that mental faculties resided in fluid-filled cavities called ventricles rather than in the brain tissue itself. Gradually, through careful observation and experimentation, scientists began to understand that the brain's substance, its grey matter and white matter, was where the magic of thought occurred. Even when scientists and physicians began to understand that the brain was indeed the center of thought and consciousness, they still believed it was fundamentally unchangeable after early development. The prevailing wisdom for most of the 20th century was that you were born with a certain number of brain cells, and that number could only decrease over time. Neurons, unlike other cells in your body, couldn't regenerate or multiply. The brain you had at age 25 was, for all intents and purposes, the brain you would have for the rest of your life, only gradually declining as neurons inevitably faded away. This view painted a rather pessimistic picture of brain health and aging. If the brain was fixed and unchangeable, if neurons couldn't be replaced and new connections couldn't be formed, then cognitive decline was simply inevitable. There was nothing you could do about it, except accept it as an unavoidable part of growing older. The best you could hope for was to minimize the damage, to avoid injury or disease, but you couldn't actually improve your brain or make it stronger. But then, something extraordinary happened. In the latter half of the 20th century, researchers began to notice something that challenged everything they thought they knew. They observed that the brain wasn't fixed at all. It was flexible. It was adaptive. It was constantly reshaping itself in response to experience, learning, and even thought itself. They called this remarkable property neuroplasticity, and it changed everything we thought we knew about the brain. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. The word itself combines neuro, referring to neurons, the nerve cells in your brain, with plastic, meaning changeable or malleable. Think of it as the brain's superpower, its ability to rewire and rebuild itself in response to experience. When you learn something new, your brain doesn't just store that information in some static filing cabinet somewhere in your head. Instead, it physically changes. Neurons reach out to other neurons, forming new connections called synapses. These connections strengthen with use and fade when neglected. The very structure of your brain transforms in response to what you do, what you think, and how you engage with the world. This discovery was revolutionary. It meant that the brain could heal itself after injury, finding new pathways around damaged areas. It meant that learning could continue throughout life, that you could acquire new skills and knowledge at any age. It meant that you weren't stuck with the brain you had. You could actively participate in shaping it, improving it, and keeping it healthy well into old age. One of the pioneers in this field was a neuroscientist named Marion Diamond. In the 1960s, she conducted experiments that seemed almost magical at the time. She took laboratory rats and placed some of them in enriched environments, cages filled with toys, tunnels, wheels, and opportunities for exploration and social interaction. Other rats were placed in standard, rather bare cages with just food and water. After some time, Diamond examined the brains of these rats under a microscope and found something astonishing. The rats in the enriched environments had developed thicker cerebral cortexes, the outermost layer of the brain responsible for complex thought, perception, and memory. The neurons in their brains had developed more connections with each other. Their brains had literally grown in response to a more stimulating environment. The rats that lived in the bare cages showed no such changes. Their brains remained as they were. What made this even more remarkable was that this wasn't just true for young rats whose brains were still developing. Even elderly rats, when placed in enriched environments, showed brain growth. Rats that were the equivalent of 80 years old in human terms could still grow new brain connections and increase the thickness of their cortex. The brain, it seemed, could change at any age. This flew in the face of everything scientists believed about the aging brain. Diamond's work opened up the possibility that humans, too, could nurture their brains throughout life, that cognitive decline wasn't inevitable, and that the right experiences and activities could actually cause the brain to flourish rather than fade. Her research influenced a paradigm shift in neuroscience, moving away from the idea of the brain as a fixed machine toward an understanding of it as a dynamic, ever-changing organ. Since Diamond's groundbreaking work, thousands of studies have confirmed and expanded our understanding of neuroplasticity. Scientists have shown that the brain can generate new neurons, a process called neurogenesis, even in adulthood. For decades, scientists insisted this was impossible. The dogma was clear. You're born with all the neurons you'll ever have, and you can only lose them, never gain them. But in the late 1990s, researchers proved that neurogenesis does indeed occur in adult brains. This happens primarily in a seahorse-shaped structure deep in the brain called the hippocampus, which plays a crucial role in forming new memories and in spatial navigation and learning. Every day, thousands of new neurons are born in your hippocampus. Whether they survive and integrate into your brain's circuitry, or whether they wither away before they can make meaningful connections, depends largely on how you live your life. Exercise, learning, social interaction, and other factors can promote the survival of these newborn neurons. Stress, lack of sleep, and sedentary behavior can hinder it. Another key researcher in the field of neuroplasticity was Fred Gage, who provided definitive proof that neurogenesis occurs in adult humans. His work showed that the human hippocampus continues to produce new neurons throughout life, and that these neurons can integrate into existing circuits and contribute to learning and memory. Gage's research also demonstrated that we can influence the rate of neurogenesis through our behaviors and choices. The beautiful truth is this: your brain is not a static organ gradually wearing out like an old machine. It is a living, changing, growing part of you that responds dynamically to how you treat it. Everything you do, from what you eat to how you move, from the quality of your sleep to the nature of your thoughts, influences your brain's structure and function. This means you have more power than you might have imagined to shape your cognitive health, to improve your memory, to sharpen your focus, and to protect your brain as you age. So, as we continue our gentle exploration tonight, we'll look at the many ways you can support your brain's health and help it thrive. We'll move slowly through each topic, taking our time, letting the information settle like snow falling softly on a winter evening. There's no rush, no urgency, just a quiet journey through the science of the brain and the simple, accessible ways you can nurture it. Let's begin with something you do every single night, or at least something you should do every night. Sleep. That mysterious state when consciousness fades and the world seems to disappear, when time passes without your awareness, when you exist in a realm of dreams and darkness. For centuries, sleep was seen as simply a time when the brain shut down, went offline, and rested. But nothing could be further from the truth. During sleep, your brain is remarkably, extraordinarily active, performing functions that are absolutely essential for learning, memory, emotional regulation, and overall brain health. Think of sleep as the brain's maintenance crew working the night shift. While you're unconscious, while your body lies still and your eyes remain closed, Your brain is busy consolidating memories, transferring information from temporary storage to long-term storage, strengthening some connections and weakening others, organizing information, extracting patterns and principles, and literally cleaning house, washing away the metabolic waste that accumulated during your waking hours. When you learn something new during the day, whether it's a fact from a book, a skill like playing a musical instrument, or an experience like visiting a new place, that information is initially stored in a structure called the hippocampus. The hippocampus acts like a temporary holding area, a short-term storage facility for new information. But the hippocampus has limited capacity. It can only hold so much. For memories to become permanent and truly yours, they need to be transferred to the neocortex, the wrinkled outer layer of the brain where long-term memories reside. This transfer process, called consolidation, happens primarily during sleep, particularly during a phase called slow-wave sleep, also known as deep sleep. During slow-wave sleep, your brain's electrical activity forms distinctive slow waves that can be measured with electroencephalography. These slow waves seem to coordinate the transfer of information from the hippocampus to the neocortex. During this phase, your brain replays the neural activity patterns that occurred during learning. Imagine you spent your afternoon learning to play a new song on the piano, practicing the finger movements, reading the notes, listening to how it sounds. While you sleep that night, the exact same neural circuits that were active during your practice will fire again, replaying the pattern over and over. It's as if your brain is practicing while you sleep, rehearsing what you learned without any conscious effort from you. This replay strengthens the connections between neurons involved in that memory, making the skill or knowledge more stable and easier to retrieve when you wake. Scientists have actually observed this neural replay in sleeping animals. They can record the firing patterns of neurons while a rat navigates a maze, and then observe those exact same patterns replaying during the rat's subsequent sleep. The brain is literally reliving the experience, cementing it into memory. The same process occurs in human brains, though it's more difficult to observe with such precision. But sleep does more than just strengthen individual memories. It also helps your brain extract general principles and patterns from specific experiences. After sleep, people are better at seeing the big picture, at understanding the underlying rules or relationships in what they've learned. Sleep doesn't just make memories stronger, it transforms them, integrating new information with existing knowledge, reorganizing it, creating a more coherent and useful understanding of the world. Researchers have demonstrated this in clever experiments. In one study, participants learned a set of word pairs. Embedded in those pairs were hidden relationships and patterns, but most participants didn't consciously notice them. After a night of sleep, participants were much better at detecting these hidden patterns than they were immediately after learning. Their sleeping brains had worked on the problem, extracting the underlying structure without any conscious effort. This ability to extract meaning and patterns from experience is one of sleep's most valuable gifts. There's also something else that happens during sleep. Something discovered relatively recently that's truly remarkable. Your brain has a waste removal system, much like the lymphatic system in the rest of your body that removes waste and toxins. But the brain system is unique. It's called the glymphatic system, taking its name from the glial cells that help make it work, and its similarity to the lymphatic system. During the day, as your brain cells work continuously, firing signals, processing information, and maintaining your consciousness, they produce metabolic waste products. These are the cellular equivalent of exhaust fumes from an engine. One of these waste products is a protein called beta amyloid. In small amounts, beta amyloid is normal and harmless. But when it accumulates, When it builds up faster than it can be cleared away, it can clump together into plaques that interfere with brain function. The accumulation of beta-amyloid plaques has been strongly linked to cognitive decline and certain brain disorders. During sleep, particularly deep, slow-wave sleep, something extraordinary happens. The spaces between brain cells actually expand. Cerebrospinal fluid, a clear fluid that bathes the brain and spinal cord, flows more freely through these expanded spaces, washing through the brain tissue like a gentle tide. This fluid carries away the beta-amyloid and other waste products, flushing them out of the brain so they can be eliminated from the body. In 2013, researchers observed this process directly in the brains of sleeping mice. They used special imaging techniques to watch in real time as cerebrospinal fluid pulsed through the sleeping brain, carrying away waste. The spaces between brain cells expanded by up to 60% during sleep, creating channels for the fluid to flow through. When the mice were awake, these spaces were much smaller, and the cleaning process was far less efficient. It's like the brain is taking out the trash, clearing away the debris that accumulated during waking hours. When you don't get enough sleep, this cleaning process is impaired, and waste products can build up, potentially contributing to cognitive problems over time. This discovery helps explain why chronic sleep deprivation is associated with an increased risk of cognitive decline. Without adequate sleep, without sufficient time for the glymphatic system to do its work, waste products accumulate. Over months and years, this accumulation may contribute to the very brain changes that scientists observe in cognitive disorders. Sleep also affects your brain's ability to regulate emotions. The amygdala, an almond-shaped structure deep in the brain that processes emotions, particularly negative emotions like fear and anxiety, becomes overactive when you're sleep-deprived. At the same time, the connection between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that helps regulate emotions and respond thoughtfully rather than reactively, weakens. This creates a perfect storm for emotional problems. Small annoyances feel like major frustrations. Mild worries balloon into significant anxieties. You become more reactive, more irritable, less able to maintain emotional equilibrium. After a good night's sleep, however, this balance is restored. The amygdala calms down, returning to its baseline level of activity. The connection with the prefrontal cortex strengthens, giving you better control over your emotional responses. This is why everything seems more manageable after a good night's sleep, why problems that felt overwhelming at night often seem more solvable in the morning. Your brain has literally reorganized itself during sleep, restoring the neural circuits that support emotional regulation. Different stages of sleep serve different functions. Sleep isn't a uniform state. It's actually a complex cycle that repeats several times throughout the night. Each cycle lasts about 90 minutes and includes several distinct stages, each with its own characteristics and functions. The cycle begins with light sleep, stage 1 and stage 2, where you're easily awakened and brain activity begins to slow down. Then comes deep sleep, stage 3, also called slow-wave sleep. This is when those slow, synchronized brain waves appear, when the glymphatic system is most active, when growth hormone is released to repair and build body tissues. Slow-wave sleep is particularly important for consolidating declarative memories, facts and information, and for physical restoration. After deep sleep comes REM sleep, named for the rapid eye movements that occur during this stage. Your eyes move quickly behind your closed eyelids, your breathing becomes irregular, your heart rate increases, and your brain activity looks remarkably similar to waking brain activity. This is when most vivid dreaming occurs. REM sleep appears to be important for consolidating procedural memories, skills, and how to do things, for processing emotions, and for creativity. Many scientists and artists have reported gaining insights and solving problems during or after dreams, suggesting that REM sleep facilitates creative connections between disparate pieces of information. Throughout the night, you cycle through these stages multiple times. Early in the night, spend more time in deep sleep. As morning approaches, you spend more time in REM sleep. Both types of sleep are important for different aspects of brain function, which is why getting a full night of sleep, allowing your brain to complete multiple cycles, is so valuable. So, how much sleep do you need? The answer varies somewhat from person to person, but for most adults, the sweet spot is between 7 and 9 hours per night. Some people need closer to 7, others closer to 9. Very few people can truly function optimally on less than 7 hours, despite what they might tell themselves. Sleep deprivation is insidious. It impairs your judgment about how impaired you actually are. You might think you're functioning fine on 6 hours of sleep, but objective measures of performance tell a different story. Consistently getting less than 7 hours of sleep can have significant effects on brain function. Even one night of poor sleep can impair your attention, your working memory, the ability to hold information in your mind temporarily, and your ability to make decisions and think clearly. You become more impulsive, more prone to errors, slower to react. Chronic sleep deprivation, getting insufficient sleep night after night, can lead to more serious problems, including an increased risk of cognitive decline, mood disorders, and various health conditions. The quality of your sleep matters just as much as the quantity. You could spend 8 hours in bed, but if your sleep is fragmented, interrupted, or doesn't include enough deep and REM sleep, you won't get the full benefits. Quality sleep means sleep that is deep, continuous, and includes adequate amounts of each sleep stage. To improve your sleep quality, consider these gentle suggestions. First, try to maintain a consistent sleep schedule, going to bed and waking up at roughly the same time each day, even on weekends. This helps regulate your body's internal clock, your circadian rhythm. Your brain likes predictability. When you go to bed and wake up at regular times, your brain learns to anticipate sleep, starting the wind-down process at the appropriate time. Create a relaxing bedtime routine, a series of calming activities that signal to your brain that it's time to sleep. Perhaps you could read a book, though not something so exciting that it keeps you awake. Take a warm bath, which causes your body temperature to drop afterward, a signal that promotes sleep. Practice gentle stretching or progressive muscle relaxation. Listen to calm music. The specific activities matter less than the consistency. When you do the same calming routine each night, your brain learns to associate these activities with sleep, making it easier to drift off. Avoid screens for at least an hour before bed. The blue light from phones, tablets, computers, and televisions can interfere with your brain's production of melatonin, a hormone that helps regulate your sleep-wake cycle. Blue light essentially tells your brain that it's still daytime, making it harder to feel sleepy. If you must use screens in the evening, consider using blue light filters or wearing blue light blocking glasses. Make your bedroom a sanctuary for sleep. Keep it cool. Most people sleep best in a room that's between 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit. Keep it dark. Even small amounts of light can interfere with sleep quality. Consider blackout curtains if street lights shine through your windows, or use an eye mask. Keep it quiet. If outside noise is a problem, consider using a white noise machine, a fan, or earplugs to block disruptive sounds. Limit caffeine, especially in the afternoon and evening. Caffeine has a half-life of about 5 hours, meaning that 5 hours after consuming it, half of it is still in your system. That cup of coffee at 3 in the afternoon could still be affecting your brain at 8 in the evening, potentially interfering with your ability to fall asleep or reach deep sleep stages. Be cautious with alcohol. While alcohol might make you feel drowsy initially, helping you fall asleep more quickly, it actually disrupts the quality of your sleep. Alcohol interferes with REM sleep and causes more frequent awakenings during the night. You might sleep for 7 or 8 hours, but wake feeling unrefreshed because the sleep was fragmented and lacked the restorative qualities it should have had. If you find yourself lying awake, worrying or ruminating, try not to force sleep. The harder you try to fall asleep, the more anxious you become about not sleeping, which makes sleep even more elusive. Instead, get up and do something calming and relaxing until you feel sleepy again. Read a book, listen to gentle music, practice deep breathing, then return to bed when you feel drowsy. For those who struggle with persistent sleep problems, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia has been shown to be highly effective, often more effective than sleeping medications. This therapy helps you identify and change thoughts and behaviors that interfere with sleep. If you regularly have trouble sleeping despite good sleep hygiene practices, consider talking with a healthcare provider about whether this approach might help you. Sleep is one of the most powerful tools you have for maintaining and improving brain function. It costs nothing, requires no special equipment, and is something your brain desperately needs. Yet, in our modern world, sleep is often undervalued, sacrificed in favor of work, entertainment, or other activities. We've come to wear sleep deprivation as a badge of honor, bragging about how little sleep we need. But the science is clear. Your brain needs sleep. Without adequate sleep, it cannot function optimally, cannot clear away waste, cannot consolidate memories, cannot regulate emotions effectively. So, tonight, as you drift off, you can rest easy knowing that your sleeping brain is hard at work, strengthening memories, clearing away waste, and preparing you for another day of thinking, learning, and experiencing the world. Now, let's turn our attention to something else that profoundly affects your brain: movement. Physical exercise. The simple act of getting your body moving, making your muscles work, raising your heart rate, and breaking a sweat has effects on your brain that are nothing short of extraordinary. For a long time, exercise was thought of as something that benefited only the body. It made sense that moving would strengthen your muscles. Your heart would become more efficient at pumping. Your bones would maintain their density. Your metabolism would improve. But your brain? That seemed separate, untouched by what happened below the neck. The brain sat protected in its bony skull, isolated from the sweaty work of physical exertion. Yet research over the past few decades has revealed that physical exercise is perhaps one of the single most powerful things you can do to improve brain function and protect against cognitive decline. When you engage in aerobic exercise, activities that get your heart pumping and your breath quickening, walking briskly, running, cycling, swimming, dancing, remarkable changes begin to occur in your brain. First, blood flow to the brain increases dramatically. Your working muscles demand more oxygen, so your heart pumps harder and faster. But this increased blood flow doesn't just go to your muscles. It also floods your brain, delivering more oxygen and more glucose, the fuel your brain cells need to function. Over time, with regular exercise, new blood vessels form in the brain, a process called angiogenesis. This creates a richer, more efficient network for delivering oxygen and nutrients to brain tissue. It's like adding new roads to a city, improving traffic flow, and ensuring that every neighborhood gets the resources it needs. But even more impressively, exercise triggers the production of a protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. This is where things get really interesting. BDNF is like fertilizer for the brain, like magic growth serum for neurons. It promotes the growth of new neurons, particularly in the hippocampus, that seahorse-shaped structure so important for memory and learning. It strengthens existing connections between neurons, making their communication more efficient and reliable. It protects neurons from damage, helping them survive and resist stress. It even helps neurons form more connections with other neurons, increasing the complexity and richness of your brain's network. When researchers measure BDNF levels in people who exercise regularly, they find that these individuals have higher levels of this crucial protein compared to sedentary people. Their brains show greater plasticity, greater ability to change and adapt. They perform better on memory tests. They show slower cognitive decline as they age. The connection between exercise and BDNF appears to be one of the key mechanisms through which physical activity benefits the brain. The effect of exercise on BDNF isn't just theoretical. Scientists have observed it directly in numerous studies. In animal studies, mice allowed to run on wheels show dramatic increases in BDNF levels in the hippocampus. These mice also grow more new neurons, show better performance on learning and memory tasks, and seem to have more resilient, healthier brains. The effect is so reliable that researchers now use exercise as a positive control in studies of cognitive enhancement. In human studies, aerobic exercise has been shown to increase BDNF levels in the bloodstream, and while measuring BDNF in the brain itself is difficult in living humans, the assumption is that blood levels reflect what's happening in the brain. People who exercise regularly show better cognitive function across multiple domains compared to sedentary individuals, even when controlling for other factors like education, diet, and overall health. One of the most compelling studies of exercise and brain health followed older adults who were assigned to either a walking program or a stretching and toning program. The walking group gradually increased their walking time until they were walking for 40 minutes 3 times per week at a moderate intensity. The stretching group did gentle stretching and toning exercises for the same duration. After 1 year, the researchers scanned the participants' brains using MRI and found something remarkable. The hippocampus, that crucial structure for memory, naturally shrinks with age, losing about 1 to 2% of its volume per year in older adults. This shrinkage is associated with memory decline. But in the walking group, the hippocampus actually grew. On average, participants in the walking group showed a 2% increase in hippocampal volume. Their brains, instead of shrinking with age, were actually growing. The stretching group, meanwhile, showed the expected decline, with their hippocampi shrinking by about 1.5%. This wasn't just a change visible on a brain scan. It translated into real functional improvements. The walking group showed better performance on memory tests than they had at the start of the study. They remembered more words, recalled more details, and showed improved spatial memory. Their BDNF levels had increased significantly. The stretching group showed no such improvements. This study, and many others like it, demonstrate that it's never too late to benefit from exercise. Even if you've been sedentary for years, even if you're in your 60s, 70s, or 80s, starting to exercise can still improve your brain health. The brain retains its plasticity throughout life, and exercise is one of the most reliable ways to enhance that plasticity. The effects of exercise on the brain aren't limited to memory and the hippocampus. Regular physical activity has been shown to improve attention and focus, making it easier to concentrate on tasks and filter out distractions. It enhances executive function, the ability to plan, organize, switch between tasks, and control impulses. These are the higher-order cognitive abilities that allow you to manage complex projects, make good decisions, and regulate your behavior. Exercise also boosts processing speed, helping your brain work faster and more efficiently. This might mean quicker reaction times, faster problem solving, or simply feeling more mentally sharp and alert. And perhaps most importantly, exercise has powerful effects on mood. It reduces symptoms of depression and anxiety, lifts overall mood, and increases feelings of well-being. Part of this is likely due to the release of endorphins during exercise, those feel-good chemicals that create a natural high. But it's also related to the structural and functional changes in the brain that exercise produces. You don't need to become a marathon runner or spend hours in a gym every day to reap these benefits. The evidence suggests that moderate aerobic exercise is sufficient to improve brain health. Moderate means exercise that raises your heart rate and makes you breathe harder, but not so hard that you can't carry on a conversation. A brisk walk, a leisurely bike ride, a swim at a comfortable pace, dancing to music you enjoy. All of these qualify as moderate aerobic exercise. The recommendation from most health organizations is about 150 minutes of moderate aerobic exercise per week. That breaks down to about 30 minutes on most days of the week. This is a manageable goal for most people. You don't need to do it all at once. 3 10-minute walks throughout the day can be just as beneficial as one 30-minute walk. The key is consistency. Regular exercise, sustained over weeks and months and years, creates lasting changes in brain structure and function. Interestingly, the type of exercise also matters to some extent. While aerobic exercise has been the most studied and shows the strongest effects on brain health, other forms of exercise offer benefits too. Resistance training, exercises that make your muscles work against resistance, like lifting weights, doing push-ups, or using resistance bands, has been shown to improve executive function and memory, though perhaps through different mechanisms than aerobic exercise. Activities that require coordination, balance, and complex motor skills may be particularly beneficial for the brain. Dancing, for example, combines aerobic activity with the cognitive challenge of learning and remembering sequences of movements, often to music. Tai Chi requires balance, coordination, and focused attention. Yoga combines physical movement with breathing practices and meditation. All of these activities engage multiple brain systems simultaneously, providing a rich form of stimulation. Even a single bout of exercise can have immediate effects on your brain. After just 20 or 30 minutes of moderate exercise, people show improved attention, faster reaction times, and better performance on cognitive tasks. This suggests that if you need to focus on a challenging mental task, if you're studying for an exam or working on a difficult project, taking a break to go for a walk or do some other form of exercise might actually help you perform better when you return. The boost in blood flow, the increase in neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine, and the temporary increase in BDNF all contribute to enhanced cognitive function in the hours following exercise. The mechanism through which exercise benefits the brain extends beyond BDNF. Exercise also increases the production of other growth factors, reduces inflammation in the brain, promotes the growth of new blood vessels, improves insulin sensitivity, which helps brain cells use glucose more efficiently, and may even help clear beta amyloid, that protein that can accumulate and contribute to cognitive problems. Exercise also appears to work synergistically with other healthy behaviors. For example, exercise and cognitive training together produce greater benefits than either one alone. Exercise and good nutrition complement each other. Exercise and adequate sleep support each other, with exercise improving sleep quality and good sleep allowing you to exercise more effectively. The beautiful thing about exercise is that it's accessible to almost everyone. You don't need expensive equipment or a gym membership. You don't need special clothes or complicated instructions.
A simple walk in your neighborhood, feeling the air on your skin, watching the trees sway, listening to the birds, can provide both physical activity and mental refreshment. Walking is free, requires no equipment beyond comfortable shoes, and can be done almost anywhere. If walking is difficult, if you have mobility limitations or joint problems that make walking painful, there are still options. Swimming and water aerobics are gentle on the joints while still providing aerobic exercise. Cycling or using a stationary bike can be easier on the knees than walking. Seated exercises, where you perform movements while sitting in a chair, can still raise your heart rate and provide benefits. The important thing is to move your body in whatever way feels good and sustainable for you. As you consider how to incorporate more movement into your life, think about activities you genuinely enjoy. Exercise shouldn't feel like punishment or a dreaded obligation. It can be playful, social, and deeply satisfying. Dance to your favorite music in your living room. Swim in a lake or ocean, feeling the water against your skin. Ride a bicycle through your neighborhood, exploring streets you've never been down. Garden, digging in the earth, tending to plants. Play with children or pets, whose enthusiasm and joy can be contagious. The more you enjoy the activity, the more likely you are to stick with it, and consistency is what brings lasting benefits to your brain. Find forms of movement
that feel good in your body, that bring you pleasure or satisfaction, that fit naturally into your life. Maybe you could walk to do errands instead of driving, take the stairs instead of the elevator. Stand up and move around every hour if you have a desk job. Dance while you cook dinner. Garden on weekends. Every bit of movement counts. Every increment of activity contributes to your brain's health. Some people find that exercising with others helps them stay motivated. Walking with a friend combines social interaction with physical activity. Joining a class, whether it's dance, tai chi, yoga, or aerobics, provides structure, social connection, and often instruction that helps you get the most from the activity. The social aspect can make exercise more enjoyable and can provide accountability that helps you show up consistently. Others prefer to exercise alone, using it as time for quiet reflection, for listening to music or audiobooks, for simply being with themselves. There's no right or wrong way. The best form of exercise is the one you'll actually do regularly over time. As you move through your day to day and in the days to come, consider how you might add a bit more movement into your life. Not in a way that feels overwhelming or impossible, but in small, manageable increments. Perhaps 5 minutes today, 10 minutes tomorrow, a short walk after dinner, a few stretches in the morning, dancing to one song. These small actions, repeated consistently, can accumulate into significant benefits for your brain. Let's move now to another crucial aspect of brain health: what you eat. The food you consume doesn't just fuel your body, it directly affects the structure and function of your brain. Your brain, despite being only about 2% of your body weight, uses roughly 20% of your total energy. It's a hungry organ, constantly active, always working, even when you're at rest, even when you're asleep. The brain is made up of fats, proteins, and various micronutrients, and it needs a steady supply of these building blocks to maintain itself, repair damage, and create new connections. The fatty membranes that surround each neuron and allow electrical signals to travel quickly, the neurotransmitters that enable neurons to communicate, the enzymes that carry out countless chemical reactions, all of these are built from the nutrients you consume in your diet. What you eat can influence everything from the production of neurotransmitters to the integrity of cell membranes, from the level of inflammation in brain tissue to the availability of energy for cognitive tasks, from the health of blood vessels supplying the brain to the rate at which new neurons are born in the hippocampus. Let's start with omega-3 fatty acids. particularly the types called docosahexaenoic acid, or DHA, and eicosapentaenoic acid, or EPA. These are found primarily in fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, sardines, herring, and trout. DHA is a major structural component of brain cell membranes. It makes up a significant portion of the fat in the brain, somewhere between 10 and 20% of the brain's total fat content. It's especially concentrated in the membranes of neurons, particularly in the areas where neurons connect with each other, the synapses. DHA makes cell membranes more fluid, more flexible. This fluidity is crucial for proper brain function. It affects how easily neurotransmitters can bind to receptors, how efficiently signals can travel along neurons, how well neurons can communicate with each other. When membranes become too rigid, when they lack sufficient DHA, all of these processes become less efficient. The brain still works, but not as well as it could. Research has consistently shown that people who consume more omega-3 fatty acids have better cognitive function across multiple domains. They perform better on tests of memory, attention, and processing speed. They show lower rates of cognitive decline as they age. They have a reduced risk of developing certain cognitive disorders. The evidence is strong enough that many neurologists and psychiatrists now recommend that their patients increase their omega-3 intake, either through food or through supplements. Omega-3s appear to work through multiple mechanisms. They reduce inflammation in the brain. Inflammation, while a necessary part of the immune response, can damage neurons and interfere with their function when it becomes chronic. Omega-3s, particularly EPA, have potent anti-inflammatory effects. They compete with omega-6 fatty acids, which are more common in the modern diet, and which can promote inflammation when consumed in excess. Omega-3s also improve the fluidity and function of cell membranes, as we discussed. They may protect against the accumulation of harmful proteins associated with cognitive decline. They influence the production of BDNF, that crucial growth factor we talked about earlier. They affect neurotransmitter systems, potentially influencing mood and cognitive function through these pathways. They protect blood vessels, helping to maintain good blood flow to the brain. In studies where people have been given omega-3 supplements or asked to increase their consumption of fatty fish, researchers have observed improvements in various aspects of cognitive function. Memory improves, attention sharpens, processing speed increases. The effects are often modest but meaningful, and they appear to accumulate over time with consistent intake. While getting omega-3s from food is generally preferable, because fish also contains other beneficial nutrients like vitamin D, selenium, and high-quality protein, supplements can be an option for those who don't eat fish. Fish oil supplements are widely available, though quality varies. Look for supplements that have been tested for purity, as fish can sometimes contain contaminants like mercury. Algae-based omega-3 supplements available for vegetarians and vegans, providing DHA without the need to consume fish. But omega-3s are just one piece of the nutritional puzzle for brain health. Your brain also benefits enormously from a diet rich in antioxidants. Antioxidants are compounds that protect cells from oxidative stress, a type of damage caused by unstable molecules called free radicals. Free radicals are produced naturally in the body as a byproduct of metabolism, but they can damage proteins, fats, and DNA if not neutralized by antioxidants. The brain is particularly vulnerable to oxidative stress for several reasons. It uses a lot of oxygen, which generates more free radicals. It contains high levels of easily oxidized fats. It has relatively modest antioxidant defenses compared to some other organs. Over time, cumulative oxidative damage may contribute to cognitive decline and various brain disorders. Fortunately, Many foods are rich in antioxidants. Fruits and vegetables, particularly colorful ones, are packed with various antioxidant compounds. Berries are especially beneficial for brain health. Blueberries, strawberries, blackberries, raspberries, all of these contain high levels of compounds called flavonoids, particularly a subclass called anthocyanins, which give berries their deep colors. Numerous studies have shown that people who eat more berries have better cognitive function and slower rates of cognitive decline. In one large study that followed nurses for many years, those who ate the most blueberries and strawberries showed significantly slower cognitive decline, with their brains appearing to age 2.5 years more slowly than those who ate few berries. The effect was dose-dependent, meaning more berries meant greater benefits. The flavonoids in berries appear to work through multiple mechanisms. They reduce oxidative stress and inflammation. They improve communication between neurons. They promote the birth of new neurons in the hippocampus. They may even help improve blood flow to the brain. The benefits seem to accumulate with regular consumption over time. Leafy green vegetables like spinach, kale, collard greens, and Swiss chard are loaded with nutrients that support brain health. They contain folate, a B vitamin crucial for brain function and the synthesis of neurotransmitters. They contain vitamin K, which is involved in the formation of certain fats found in brain cell membranes. They contain lutein and zeaxanthin, carotenoids that accumulate in the brain and appear to support cognitive function. They contain various antioxidants that protect brain cells from damage. Studies have found that people who eat more leafy greens have slower cognitive decline as they age. In one study, people who ate 1 serving of leafy greens per day had cognitive abilities equivalent to someone 11 years younger, compared to those who rarely ate leafy greens. Just 1 serving a day, a cup of raw greens or half a cup of cooked greens, was associated with this dramatic difference. Nuts and seeds are another brain-healthy food group. Walnuts are particularly rich in omega-3 fatty acids, the plant-based form called alpha-linolenic acid, or ALA. While ALA isn't as potent as the DHA and EPA found in fish, the body can convert small amounts of ALA into these more active forms. And walnuts also contain many other beneficial compounds, including antioxidants and polyphenols. Almonds and sunflower seeds are excellent sources of vitamin E, an antioxidant that protects cell membranes from oxidative damage. Vitamin E is fat-soluble, meaning it can protect the fatty membranes of neurons. Studies have found that higher vitamin E intake is associated with slower cognitive decline, though the evidence is stronger for vitamin E from food than from supplements. Pumpkin seeds provide zinc, magnesium, iron, and copper, all minerals important for brain function. Zinc is particularly crucial. It's involved in neurotransmitter function, and zinc deficiency can impair memory and cognitive function. The brain contains high concentrations of zinc, particularly in areas involved in memory and learning. Dark chocolate, with a cocoa content of 70% or higher, contains flavonoids similar to those found in berries. These compounds can improve blood flow to the brain, enhance memory, and support cognitive function. Chocolate also contains small amounts of caffeine and a compound called theobromine, both of which can provide a gentle boost to attention and alertness. Of course, moderation is key, as chocolate also contains sugar and calories, but a small amount of high-quality dark chocolate can be part of a brain-healthy diet. Whole grains provide a steady supply of glucose, the brain's primary fuel source. Unlike refined carbohydrates like white bread or white rice, which cause rapid spikes and crashes in blood sugar, whole grains release glucose slowly and steadily. This provides consistent energy for cognitive tasks, helping you maintain focus and mental clarity throughout the day. Foods like oats, brown rice, quinoa, barley, and whole wheat bread can help stabilize your energy and mood. The Mediterranean diet, which has been extensively studied for its effects on brain health, emphasizes many of these brain-healthy foods. This dietary pattern includes abundant fish, olive oil, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, and nuts, with moderate amounts of dairy and limited red meat. It's not really a diet in the restrictive sense, but rather a way of eating that's been practiced for centuries in Mediterranean countries. People who follow a Mediterranean-style diet show slower cognitive decline as they age. They perform better on memory tests. They have a reduced risk of developing cognitive impairment. The benefits appear to come from the synergistic effects of multiple nutrients working together. The omega-3s from fish, the antioxidants from fruits and vegetables, the healthy fats from olive oil, nuts, the fiber and steady energy from whole grains, all of these contribute to a diet that supports brain health. On the flip side, certain dietary patterns can harm the brain. Diets high in saturated fats, trans fats, and refined sugars have been associated with worse cognitive function and faster cognitive decline. These foods can promote inflammation throughout the body, including in the brain. They can impair the function of blood vessels, reducing blood flow to the brain. They can interfere with the production and function of BDNF. They may promote insulin resistance, which affects how efficiently brain cells can use glucose. Trans fats, which are found in many processed and fried foods, are particularly harmful. They've been largely removed from the food supply in many countries due to their negative health effects, but they still lurk in some products. Reading ingredient labels and avoiding foods that contain partially hydrogenated oils can help you avoid trans fats. Excessive sugar intake has been linked to cognitive problems. High sugar consumption can lead to insulin resistance, inflammation, and oxidative stress, all of which can harm the brain. While the brain needs glucose for fuel, it functions best when glucose is delivered steadily from complex carbohydrates rather than in spikes from refined sugars. Staying hydrated is also important for brain function, though it's often overlooked. The brain is about 75% water, and it needs adequate hydration to function optimally. Even mild dehydration, as little as 1 to 2% loss of body water, can impair attention, memory, and mood. You might feel more tired, more irritable, less able to concentrate. The exact amount of water you need varies based on your size, activity level, and climate. But a general guideline is to drink water throughout the day, aiming for a pale yellow urine color as an indicator of adequate hydration. Don't wait until you feel thirsty, as thirst is actually a late sign of dehydration. As you think about your diet and its effects on your brain, remember that perfection isn't the goal. You don't need to overhaul your entire way of eating overnight. Small changes, sustained over time, can make a meaningful difference. Perhaps you could start by adding a serving of fatty fish to your week, salmon for dinner one night, sardines on toast for lunch. Or maybe you could snack on a handful of berries each afternoon. Or add a serving of leafy greens to your dinner. Or choose whole grain bread instead of white bread. Or snack on nuts instead of chips. These modest shifts, these small improvements in the quality of your diet, can accumulate over weeks and months into real benefits for your brain. The important thing is consistency. Eating well most of the time, making mostly healthy choices most days, while still allowing yourself flexibility and enjoyment. Food is not just fuel. It's also pleasure, culture, connection, celebration. A healthy relationship with food includes both nourishment and joy. Now, let's explore something more subtle but equally important for brain health: the nature of your thoughts and mental experiences. Specifically, let's talk about meditation and mindfulness, ancient practices that modern neuroscience has shown can literally change the structure and function of the brain. Meditation has been practiced for thousands of years in various cultures and traditions, particularly in Buddhist and Hindu traditions, but also in Christian contemplative practices and many other spiritual paths. For most of this history, meditation was seen primarily as a spiritual or religious practice, a path to enlightenment, a way to connect with the divine, or a method for cultivating inner peace and wisdom. But in recent decades, meditation has been increasingly studied by scientists who want to understand its effects on the brain and mental health. Using brain imaging techniques like magnetic resonance imaging and functional MRI, researchers can now observe what happens in the brains of people who meditate regularly, and what they found is remarkable. One of the most consistent findings is that meditation increases the thickness of the prefrontal cortex, the area at the front of your brain, right behind your forehead. This region is responsible for higher-order thinking, the kind of complex mental work that makes us distinctly human. The prefrontal cortex is involved in decision-making, planning for the future, controlling impulses, regulating emotions, focusing attention, and thinking about our own thoughts, what's called metacognition. In people who meditate regularly, particularly those with years or decades of practice, the prefrontal cortex is actually thicker than in non-meditators of the same age. This difference is most pronounced in older adults. Normally, the prefrontal cortex thins with age, losing volume and density. This age-related thinning is associated with declines in executive function, with difficulty controlling impulses, managing complex tasks, and regulating emotions. But in long-term meditators, this thinning is reduced or even reversed. Their prefrontal cortexes look younger than their chronological age would predict. It's as if meditation provides a buffer against age-related brain changes, helping to preserve the structure and function of this crucial brain region. Meditation also affects the hippocampus, that seahorse-shaped structure we've talked about so much, crucial for memory and learning. Studies have shown that even relatively short-term meditation practice can increase the volume of grey matter in the hippocampus. In one study, participants who had never meditated before were assigned to either an 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction program or a waitlist control group. The mindfulness group learned meditation and practiced for about 30 minutes per day. After 8 weeks, brain scans revealed that the meditation group increased grey matter density in the hippocampus compared to the control group. This physical change in brain structure occurred after just 8 weeks of practice. The meditation group also reported feeling less stressed, and their stress levels correlated with the changes in their brains. Those who showed the greatest increase in hippocampal grey matter reported the greatest reduction in stress. Perhaps even more interesting is what meditation does to the amygdala, that almond-shaped structure deep in the brain that processes emotions, particularly fear and anxiety. The amygdala is part of your brain's alarm system, constantly scanning your environment for threats, triggering the fight or flight response when it perceives danger. In people with anxiety disorders, the amygdala tends to be overactive, responding strongly even to stimuli that aren't actually threatening. An innocuous comment might be perceived as criticism. A minor setback might feel like a catastrophe. Research has shown that meditation can reduce the size and activity of the amygdala. People who complete meditation training programs show decreased amygdala activation in response to stressful or emotional stimuli. Even when they're not actively meditating, even when they're going about their normal daily activities, their brains respond more calmly to stress. The amygdala is less reactive, less likely to trigger an overwhelming emotional response. This isn't just a temporary effect while you're meditating. It represents a lasting change in how your brain functions. Meditation appears to recalibrate your stress response system, helping you become more resilient in the face of challenges and more able to maintain emotional equilibrium. Meditation also strengthens the connections between different brain regions. One particularly important connection is between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. Think of the prefrontal cortex as the wise, rational part of your brain, the part that can think things through, consider consequences, and respond thoughtfully. The amygdala is the emotional, reactive part, the part that responds quickly and instinctively to perceived threats. When the connection between these two regions is strong, the prefrontal cortex can effectively regulate the amygdala. You can experience an emotion without being overwhelmed by it. You can feel anxious but still think clearly. You can be angry but still choose how to respond rather than reacting impulsively. Meditation strengthens this connection. Brain imaging studies show increased connectivity between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala in meditators. This enhanced connectivity translates into better emotional regulation in daily life. Meditators report being less reactive, more able to pause before responding, more capable of choosing their actions rather than being driven by impulses or emotions. Another fascinating finding concerns what's called the default mode network. A set of brain regions become active when your mind wanders, when you're not focused on any particular task, when you're daydreaming, ruminating, or lost in thought. The default mode network includes regions in the medial prefrontal cortex and the posterior cingulate cortex, among others. Overactivity of the default mode network is associated with unhappiness, anxiety, and depression. When your mind wanders, it often wanders to worries, regrets, or anxieties. You might replay past mistakes or rehearse future disasters. This kind of rumination, this getting lost in thought, tends to make people less happy, more stressed, and more anxious. When people meditate, activity in the default mode network decreases. They spend less time lost in thought and more time present with their immediate experience. Instead of being absorbed in worries about the future or regrets about the past, they're more aware of what's happening right now, in this moment. Long-term meditators show reduced default mode network activity, even when they're not meditating, suggesting that the practice cultivates a more present-centered way of being that persists throughout daily life. You don't need to become a meditation master, spending years in silent retreat to experience these benefits. Research suggests that even brief, regular practice can make a measurable difference. Studies have found improvements in attention, stress, emotional regulation, and even brain structure with as little as 10 to 20 minutes of meditation per day over the course of a few weeks. The key is consistency. Like exercise, the benefits of meditation accumulate with regular practice. Meditating for an hour once a month is less effective than meditating for 10 minutes every day. The daily practice, the repeated engagement with the mental exercise of focusing attention and noticing when it wanders, gradually reshapes your brain. If you're new to meditation, you might start with a simple mindfulness practice. Find a quiet place where you won't be disturbed. You don't need any special equipment or a particular posture, though sitting comfortably with your back straight helps you stay alert. You could sit on a cushion on the floor, in a chair with your feet flat on the ground, or even lying down. Though lying down makes it easier to fall asleep, which isn't the goal. Close your eyes, or lower your gaze to the floor a few feet in front of you. Bring your attention to your breath, noticing the sensation of air moving in and out of your nostrils, or the rise and fall of your chest or belly as you breathe. You're not trying to control your breath or breathe in any particular way. Just notice it as it is. Your mind will wander. This is completely normal and expected. Everyone's mind wanders during meditation, from complete beginners to experienced practitioners. You might notice that you're thinking about your to-do list, replaying a conversation from earlier, planning what to eat for dinner, wondering if you're doing the meditation correctly. All of this is normal. When you notice that your attention has drifted away from the breath, gently, without judgment or criticism, without getting frustrated with yourself, bring it back to the breath. That's the practice. Not forcing your mind to be blank, not achieving some special state of consciousness, but simply noticing when your attention has wandered and gently redirecting it. Each time you do this, each time you notice that you've been lost in thought and bring your attention back, you're exercising your attention, strengthening your ability to focus. It might help to use a gentle label when you notice your mind has wandered. Silently say to yourself, thinking or wandering, acknowledging what happened without judgment, and then return to the breath. This labeling can help you observe your mental processes with more clarity and less reactivity. At first, your mind might wander every few seconds. That's fine. Just keep gently bringing it back. Over time, with practice, you'll find that you can sustain attention for longer periods. The wandering will still happen, but you'll notice it more quickly, and the process of returning to the breath will become more natural. There are many forms of meditation, and you might explore different approaches to find what resonates with you. Some people prefer guided meditations, where a voice leads you through the practice, perhaps describing a peaceful scene, guiding you through a body scan, or offering words of encouragement and instruction. Many apps and websites offer guided meditations of various lengths and styles. Body scan meditation involves systematically bringing awareness to different parts of your body, starting perhaps with your toes and gradually moving up through your legs, torso, arms, and head. You're not trying to change anything or relax anything, though relaxation often occurs naturally. You're simply noticing sensations, whatever they are: warmth, coolness, tingling, pressure, tension, or perhaps no particular sensation at all. Loving kindness meditation involves generating feelings of warmth, care, and goodwill, first for yourself, then for loved ones, then for neutral people, and eventually even for difficult people. You might silently repeat phrases like, "May I be happy," "May I be healthy," "May I be safe," "May I live with ease," adapting them as you extend the wishes to others. Walking meditation involves bringing the same quality of mindful attention to the experience of walking. You walk slowly, noticing the sensations in your feet and legs, the shifting of weight, the movement of your body through space. This can be a nice alternative for people who find sitting meditation uncomfortable or who prefer to be moving. The key across all these forms is cultivating a quality of kind, non-judgmental attention. You're not trying to achieve a particular state or suppress certain thoughts or feelings. You're simply practicing being present with your experience, whatever it is, without getting lost in it or swept away by it. The effects of meditation on the brain are cumulative. Like exercise, the benefits build over time with regular practice. A few minutes each day, sustained over weeks and months, can lead to meaningful changes in brain structure and function. Changes that support attention, emotional balance, stress resilience, and overall well-being. And unlike many interventions for brain health, meditation costs nothing, requires no equipment, and can be done almost anywhere at any time. Let's turn now to another aspect of cognitive health that often gets overlooked, but that's crucial for maintaining brain function: mental stimulation and learning. Your brain, like any complex system, thrives on challenge. When you engage in mentally stimulating activities, when you learn new things, solve problems, and stretch your cognitive abilities, you're not just passing time or entertaining yourself. You're actively building and strengthening neural connections, creating new pathways, and increasing your brain's resilience. The concept of cognitive reserve helps explain why mental stimulation is so important. Cognitive reserve refers to the brain's resilience in the face of aging or disease. It's like having a reserve tank of cognitive resources, a buffer that can compensate for damage or decline. Imagine two people, both the same age, who have the same amount of age-related brain changes visible on a scan. One person has high cognitive reserve, built up through years of education, mentally demanding work, and intellectually stimulating leisure activities. The other has lower cognitive reserve. The person with higher cognitive reserve will likely show better cognitive function and fewer symptoms, even though the physical state of their brains is similar. The reserve provides a cushion, a set of alternative pathways and strategies that the brain can use to maintain function despite physical changes. People with higher cognitive reserve show slower cognitive decline as they age. They may develop symptoms of cognitive disorders later than those with lower cognitive reserve, even when the amount of underlying pathology is the same. The reserve doesn't prevent brain changes, but it helps the brain compensate for them, maintaining function for longer. This means that the mental activities you engage in throughout your life are creating a kind of buffer, a protective cushion that can help your brain maintain function even as it ages. And here's the encouraging part. It's never too late to build cognitive reserve. The brain remains plastic throughout life, capable of forming new connections and adapting to new challenges. Even if you haven't engaged in many mentally stimulating activities up to this point, starting now can still make a difference. So, what kinds of activities build cognitive reserve and support brain health? The key characteristics are that they should be novel, complex, and engaging. Doing the same crossword puzzle every day might be pleasant and relaxing, but once you've learned the patterns and know what to expect, it's not particularly challenging. Your brain benefits most from activities that push you slightly out of your comfort zone, that require you to think in new ways, learn new skills, and adapt to new demands. Learning a new language is one of the most powerful forms of mental stimulation. Language learning engages multiple cognitive systems simultaneously. You have to learn new vocabulary, thousands of new words. You have to understand grammar rules that may be very different from your native language. You have to practice pronunciation, training your mouth to make sounds it's not used to making. You have to think in different linguistic structures, sometimes expressing ideas in fundamentally different ways than your native language does. Studies have shown that bilingual and multilingual individuals have greater cognitive reserve than monolingual individuals. They perform better on tests of executive function, particularly tasks that require switching between different mental sets or inhibiting irrelevant information. They show slower cognitive decline as they age. Some studies have found that bilingual individuals develop symptoms of certain cognitive disorders 4 to 5 years later than monolingual individuals, even when the amount of underlying brain pathology is the same. Even starting to learn a language later in life can provide cognitive benefits. You don't need to become fluent. The process of learning itself, of challenging your brain with new linguistic structures and practicing regularly, is what builds cognitive reserve. Learning to play a musical instrument is another excellent brain workout. Music engages multiple cognitive systems simultaneously in a uniquely demanding way. You have to develop fine motor control to move your fingers, hands, or breath in precise ways. You have to read musical notation, translating visual symbols into sounds and movements. You have to develop auditory discrimination, hearing the sounds you're creating and adjusting them to match what you intend. You have to use memory, learning pieces and practicing them until they become automatic. Playing music also requires attention, especially when you're learning, and it engages emotional and aesthetic processing as you interpret the music and try to express its meaning. All of these cognitive demands, occurring simultaneously, create a rich form of brain stimulation. Research has found that musicians have enhanced connectivity between different brain regions compared to non-musicians. Areas involved in motor control, auditory processing, and memory show stronger connections in musicians' brains. Even older adults who take up an instrument show cognitive benefits, with improvements in memory, attention, and processing speed after several months of regular practice. Taking up a new hobby or craft challenges your brain in beneficial ways. Learning to paint or draw requires you to see the world differently, to notice shapes, shadows, and colors you might otherwise overlook. Woodworking requires spatial reasoning, planning, and problem-solving as you figure out how to construct something. Knitting or crochet involves following patterns, counting, and developing fine motor skills. Photography combines technical knowledge of how cameras work with aesthetic judgments about composition and lighting. Gardening involves learning about plants, soil, seasons, and care requirements, as well as planning and problem-solving. These activities often provide a sense of accomplishment and joy as you create something with your hands, see your skills improve, and produce something tangible. This emotional satisfaction, this sense of mastery and progress, contributes to the benefits. When activities are meaningful and rewarding, you're more likely to engage with them regularly and deeply, and this consistent engagement is what builds cognitive reserve. Reading, particularly challenging material that makes you think, is wonderful for the brain. It engages language areas as you decode words and sentences. It activates imagination as you picture scenes and characters. It exercises memory as you keep track of plot, characters, and ideas across pages and chapters. It exposes you to new ideas, perspectives, and information, all of which stimulate cognitive growth. People who read regularly throughout their lives, particularly those who read books rather than just short articles or social media posts, show better cognitive function in old age. Reading complex fiction, where you have to keep track of multiple characters and storylines, may be particularly beneficial. Reading non-fiction that introduces you to new subjects, that teaches you something unfamiliar, challenges your brain to build new knowledge structures. Social engagement is also crucial for brain health, though it's often not thought of as a form of mental stimulation. But conversation, especially deep, meaningful conversation, is cognitively demanding. You have to listen carefully to what the other person is saying, process their words, and infer their meaning. You have to access your own knowledge and memories to formulate a response. You have to articulate your thoughts clearly. You have to monitor the social and emotional aspects of the interaction, reading facial expressions and tone of voice, adjusting your communication based on feedback. All of this happens rapidly and largely automatically, but it represents significant cognitive work. People with strong social connections tend to have better cognitive function and slower cognitive decline than those who are socially isolated. Loneliness and social isolation are actually risk factors for cognitive impairment, comparable in their effects to smoking or physical inactivity. Games and puzzles can be beneficial when they're varied and appropriately challenging. Chess requires strategic thinking and planning. Bridge involves memory, probability, and communication with a partner. Strategy games of various kinds exercise problem-solving and forward thinking. Logic puzzles and brain teasers challenge different cognitive skills. Sudoku requires logical deduction and pattern recognition. The key is to keep challenging yourself. Once a game or puzzle becomes too easy, once you're just going through familiar motions, it's time to find something new or increase the difficulty. The brain benefits from novelty and challenge, not from repetition of easy tasks. Even your everyday activities can become opportunities for mental stimulation if you approach them with curiosity and intention. Try taking a different route to work or to familiar places, forcing your brain to navigate unfamiliar territory and notice new details. When you meet someone new, challenge yourself to remember their name and at least one interesting fact about them. Then try to recall them later. When you encounter a word you don't know, look it up and try to use it in conversation or writing. When you face a problem, resist the immediate urge to ask someone else or look up the answer, and instead spend some time thinking through possible solutions yourself. Cook new recipes from unfamiliar cuisines, challenging yourself to follow complex instructions and work with new ingredients. Learn about a topic you know nothing about, perhaps astronomy, ancient history, philosophy, or architecture. Visit museums and really look at the exhibits, reading the descriptions and thinking about what you're seeing. Listen to new types of music and try to understand what makes them distinctive. The underlying principle is simple: use it or lose it. Neural connections that are used frequently are strengthened and maintained. Those that are neglected gradually weaken and fade. By regularly engaging in mentally stimulating activities, you're keeping your brain's circuits active and strong, building new connections, and creating the cognitive reserve that will serve you well as you age. But there's an important caveat. The mental stimulation should be enjoyable, or at least satisfying. If an activity feels like pure drudgery, if you're forcing yourself through it just because you think it's good for your brain, you're less likely to stick with it. The best brain-healthy activities are ones that genuinely interest you, that capture your attention, that provide a sense of engagement and maybe even flow. That state where you lose track of time because you're so absorbed in what you're doing. As you think about how to incorporate more mental stimulation into your life, consider your natural interests and curiosities. What have you always wanted to learn but never made time for? What sparks your interest when you browse a bookstore or scroll through online courses? What did you love doing as a child that you've let fall away? Following your genuine curiosity and rediscovering old passions is one of the best ways to ensure that mental stimulation becomes a sustainable, enjoyable part of your life, rather than another obligation on an already full to-do list. We've talked about sleep, exercise, nutrition, meditation, and mental stimulation. But there's another factor that profoundly affects brain health, one that's often underestimated or overlooked. Stress. Not the occasional short-term stress of giving a presentation, meeting a deadline, or running to catch a bus. That kind of acute stress is normal and even beneficial in small doses, helping you rise to challenges and perform well under pressure. We're talking about chronic stress, the kind that persists for weeks, months, or even years, the kind that wears away at your well-being and, as it turns out, at your brain. When you experience stress, whether it's from work pressures, relationship difficulties, financial worries, caregiving responsibilities, or any other source, your body responds with a cascade of hormonal and physiological changes designed to help you deal with a threat. Your adrenal glands, small organs that sit atop your kidneys, release cortisol, often called the stress hormone. In the short term, cortisol serves useful purposes. It mobilizes energy, breaking down stored glucose so your muscles and brain have fuel. It sharpens attention and focus. It suppresses non-essential functions like digestion and reproduction. It primes your body for action, preparing you to fight or flee. This stress response evolved to help our ancestors deal with acute threats, like encountering a predator. But our modern stressors are different. They're usually not resolved in minutes or hours. They persist. The work deadline leads to another work deadline. The financial worry doesn't disappear when the bill is paid because another bill arrives. The difficult relationship continues day after day. When stressors are chronic, when they're always present or frequently recurring, cortisol remains elevated for extended periods, and this chronic elevation can have damaging effects on the brain. Chronic stress has been shown to shrink the hippocampus. High levels of cortisol can actually cause neurons in the hippocampus to atrophy, their branches pulling back, their connections weakening. In severe cases, neurons can even perish. Chronic stress also interferes with neurogenesis, the birth of new neurons in the hippocampus. The stem cells that would normally divide and create new neurons become less active. Fewer new neurons are born, and those that are born are less likely to survive and integrate into the brain's circuitry. The result is that people under chronic stress often report problems with memory and concentration. They have trouble remembering details, struggle to learn new information, and find it hard to focus on tasks. Brain imaging studies show that people under chronic stress tend to have smaller hippocampal volumes compared to those with lower stress levels. Chronic stress also affects the prefrontal cortex, weakening connections and impairing function. The prefrontal cortex, remember, is responsible for executive functions like planning, decision-making, impulse control, and emotional regulation. When it's impaired by chronic stress, all of these abilities suffer. You might find it harder to make decisions, easier to give in to impulses, more difficult to regulate your emotions effectively. Ironically, the very part of your brain that helps you manage stress effectively is impaired by chronic stress, creating a vicious cycle. The more stressed you are, the less able you are to cope with stress effectively, which can lead to more stress. On the other hand, chronic stress seems to enlarge and increase activity in the amygdala, making you more reactive to emotional stimuli, more prone to anxiety and fear responses. Your threat detection system becomes hypersensitive. Things that wouldn't normally bother you start to feel threatening. Minor setbacks feel like major crises. You're constantly on edge, constantly scanning for dangers. Over time, chronic stress can lead to a brain that's primed for negativity and threat, with a shrunken hippocampus impairing memory, a weakened prefrontal cortex reducing self-control and emotional regulation, and an enlarged amygdala making you hypervigilant and anxious. This is not a recipe for cognitive health or overall well-being. So, managing stress is crucial for brain health. But how do you do that? Especially when stress often comes from circumstances that feel beyond your control. Demanding jobs, financial pressures, health problems, relationship difficulties, caregiving responsibilities, or the general overwhelm of modern life. While you may not always be able to eliminate the sources of stress in your life, you can change how you respond to stress, and this can make a significant difference for your brain. Many of the practices we've already discussed, exercise, meditation, adequate sleep, are powerful stress management tools. They help regulate the stress response system, reducing cortisol levels and building resilience. Exercise, as we discussed, has direct anti-stress effects. It reduces cortisol levels. It triggers the release of endorphins, natural mood elevators. It improves sleep, which helps with stress management. It provides a healthy outlet for tension and anxiety. Regular exercisers report feeling less stressed and better able to cope with life's challenges. Meditation, particularly mindfulness meditation, trains you to relate to stressful thoughts and feelings differently. Instead of getting swept away by worries, instead of ruminating endlessly on problems, you learn to observe these mental events with some distance, recognizing them as temporary mental phenomena rather than absolute truths. This shift in perspective can significantly reduce the psychological impact of stressors. Adequate sleep is crucial for stress management because sleep deprivation itself is a stressor that elevates cortisol. It also impairs the prefrontal cortex's ability to regulate emotions and the amygdala, making you more reactive. When you're well rested, you're better able to cope with challenges and maintain emotional equilibrium. But there are other approaches to stress management as well. Deep breathing exercises can activate your body's relaxation response, calming the nervous system and reducing cortisol levels. The parasympathetic nervous system, which promotes rest and digestion, is activated by slow, deep breathing. Something as simple as taking a few slow, deep breaths, perhaps inhaling for a count of 4, holding for a count of 4, and exhaling for a count of 6, can shift your physiology from stress to calm. Progressive muscle relaxation, where you systematically tense and then release different muscle groups in your body, can reduce physical tension and promote relaxation. Many people carry stress in their bodies without even realizing it, tensing their shoulders, clenching their jaws, tightening their stomachs. Becoming aware of this tension and deliberately releasing it can help you feel calmer. Spending time in nature has been shown to reduce stress and improve mood. The Japanese practice of forest bathing, or Shinrin-yoku, involves spending time in forests, walking slowly, breathing deeply, taking in the sights, sounds, and smells of nature. Research has found that forest bathing reduces cortisol levels, lowers blood pressure and heart rate, and improves mood and feelings of well-being. Even if you don't have access to a forest, spending time in any natural setting, a park, a garden, near water, can provide similar benefits. Looking at trees, listening to birds, feeling grass or soil under your feet. These simple experiences can help your nervous system downshift from stress mode. If you can't get to nature, even looking at images of natural scenes, listening to nature sounds, or having plants in your home or workspace can have a mild calming effect. The human nervous system seems to respond positively to nature in ways that we're only beginning to understand fully. Social support is one of the most powerful buffers against stress. Talking with friends or family members you trust, feeling understood and cared for, can help you process difficult emotions and put stressors in perspective. Social connection triggers the release of oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding hormone, which has anti-stress effects. It also reminds you that you're not alone, that there are people who care about you and would help if you needed it. Even brief positive social interactions can improve mood and reduce stress. A friendly conversation with a neighbor, a warm interaction with a store clerk, petting a friendly dog, all of these small moments of connection can add up to meaningful stress reduction over the course of a day. Finding activities that bring you joy and relaxation, activities that have nothing to do with your stressors, can provide essential respite. Listening to music you love, taking a warm bath, engaging in a hobby, playing with a pet, watching something funny, reading something absorbing. These moments of pleasure and relaxation aren't frivolous. They're necessary for maintaining your well-being and managing stress effectively. It's also worth examining your thoughts and interpretations. Often, it's not the stressor itself, but your perception of it that determines how much it affects you. Two people can experience the same event and respond very differently based on how they interpret it, what meaning they assign to it, and what they think it says about them or their future. Cognitive behavioral therapy and related approaches teach skills for identifying and challenging unhelpful thought patterns, for finding more balanced and realistic ways of interpreting situations. This doesn't mean adopting toxic positivity, pretending everything is fine when it's not, or denying real difficulties. It means recognizing that the stories you tell yourself about your circumstances can either amplify or reduce their stressful impact. For example, if you make a mistake at work, you could interpret it as evidence that you're incompetent and will probably be fired, which would cause significant stress. Or you could interpret it as a normal human error that everyone makes sometimes, an opportunity to learn, which would cause much less stress. The event is the same, but the interpretation and therefore the stress response is very different. Learning to catch catastrophic thinking, all-or-nothing thinking, overgeneralizations, and other cognitive distortions, and to replace them with more balanced thoughts, can significantly reduce the psychological stress you experience. This is a skill that takes practice, but it's one that can be learned and that can make a real difference in how you experience challenges. Sometimes, managing stress means setting boundaries, saying no to additional commitments when you're already stretched thin, asking for help when you need it, or making difficult decisions to change your circumstances. This isn't always easy. It may require courage, uncomfortable conversations, or accepting imperfection. But protecting your mental health and brain health is worth the effort. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot give your best to others if you're depleted and overwhelmed. The relationship between stress and brain health reminds us that cognitive function doesn't exist in isolation from the rest of your life. Your brain is affected by your emotional state, your relationships, your sense of purpose and meaning, your workload, your financial security, your overall quality of life. Nurturing your brain means attending to your whole self, not just doing brain exercises or taking supplements, but creating a life that supports your well-being in all its dimensions. Let's talk about one more factor that influences brain health, one that many people don't think about, but that research has shown can have significant effects. The quality of your social connections and relationships. Humans are profoundly social beings. Our brains evolved in the context of complex social groups, and they're exquisitely tuned to interact with other brains, to read emotions, to communicate, to cooperate, to empathize. Research has consistently shown that people with strong social connections have better cognitive function and slower cognitive decline than those who are socially isolated. Loneliness and social isolation are significant risk factors for cognitive impairment, comparable in their effects to smoking, physical inactivity, or obesity. This isn't just about having people around, it's about the quality and depth of your connections, about feeling understood, valued, and cared for. Why does social connection matter so much for the brain? There are several reasons, and they work together in complex ways. First, as we mentioned earlier, social interaction is cognitively demanding. Conversation requires attention, memory, language processing, perspective taking, and emotional regulation. It's a workout for your brain, engaging multiple cognitive systems simultaneously. When you have a conversation, you have to listen carefully to what the other person is saying, not just the words, but the tone, the subtext, the emotions underlying the words. You have to hold this information in your working memory while you access your own knowledge and memories to formulate a response. You have to find the right words to express your thoughts clearly. You have to monitor the other person's responses to gauge whether they're understanding you, whether they're interested, how they're feeling. You have to adjust your communication based on this feedback. All of this happens rapidly and largely automatically, but it represents significant cognitive work. And unlike solitary cognitive activities like crossword puzzles, social interaction involves unpredictability and complexity that keeps your brain on its toes. You can't anticipate exactly what the other person will say or do, so you have to adapt in real time. Second, social relationships provide emotional support, which helps buffer against stress and its damaging effects on the brain. When you have people you can turn to, people who care about you and support you, stressful events are less likely to overwhelm you. You have resources, both practical and emotional, to help you cope. You can talk through your worries, gain perspective, feel less alone with your difficulties. Social support has been shown to reduce cortisol levels and dampen the stress response. Simply knowing that you have people who would help if you needed it can make stressors feel more manageable. This stress buffering effect of social relationships protects the brain from the harmful effects of chronic stress we discussed earlier. Third, social connections give you a sense of purpose and meaning. Having roles and responsibilities in the lives of others, being needed and valued, caring for others and being cared for. These aspects of social life can motivate you to stay engaged with the world, to take care of yourself, and to continue learning and growing. Purpose and meaning are powerful motivators for maintaining health behaviors and cognitive engagement. Fourth, shared activities often combine social interaction with other brain-healthy behaviors. When you take a dance class with friends, you're combining aerobic exercise, learning new skills, social interaction, and enjoyment. When you participate in a book club, you're reading, engaging in stimulating conversation, and maintaining social connections. When you volunteer in your community, you're often learning new skills, meeting new people, and contributing to something meaningful. The quality of your social connections matters more than the quantity. Having a few close, meaningful relationships, people you can really talk to, who know you well, who you trust, is more beneficial than having many superficial acquaintances. Relationships characterized by trust, mutual support, genuine care, and reciprocity provide the greatest benefits for brain health and overall well-being. On the flip side, difficult relationships, those characterized by conflict, criticism, betrayal, or lack of support, can be sources of stress that harm rather than help. It's not just about having relationships, it's about having relationships that are supportive and positive more often than they're stressful. If you're feeling socially isolated, if you don't have the connections you'd like, there are steps you can take to build or strengthen relationships. Reach out to old friends or family members you've lost touch with. A simple message, saying you were thinking of them and asking how they're doing, can rekindle a connection. Join a group or club based on your interests. Whether it's a hiking group, a craft circle, a book club, a choir, a sports league, or a volunteer organization, shared interests provide a natural foundation for connection. People who do things together tend to form bonds. Take a class. Adult education courses, whether they're in cooking, art, language, dance, or any other subject, provide opportunities to meet people while learning something new. The shared experience of being students together can create natural connections. Volunteer for a cause you care about. Volunteering not only gives you a sense of purpose and contribution, but also brings you into contact with other people who share your values. Working together toward a common goal can forge strong bonds. Attend community events, festivals, concerts, lectures, neighborhood gatherings. All of these provide opportunities for social interaction. Even if you don't make deep friendships, regular pleasant interactions with familiar faces contribute to a sense of community and belonging. For those who are shy or introverted, building social connections can feel more challenging. Remember that meaningful connection doesn't require being the life of the party or having dozens of friends. Even one or two close relationships can provide significant benefits. Quality over quantity is what matters. Start small. Smile and say hello to neighbors. Have brief friendly exchanges with people you encounter regularly. Join an activity where the focus is on the shared activity rather than on pure socializing, which can feel less pressured. Many introverts find it easier to connect through shared activities than through traditional social gatherings. In our increasingly digital world, it's worth considering the quality of online versus in-person interactions. Technology can certainly help maintain connections across distances, which is valuable. Video calls can allow you to see loved ones who live far away. Social media can help you keep up with friends' lives. Online communities can provide support and connection around shared interests or experiences. However, research suggests that face-to-face interaction has unique benefits that digital communication doesn't fully replicate. The richness of in-person communication, the body language, the facial expressions, the tone of voice, the physical presence, the ability to read subtle social cues. All of these engage your brain in ways that text messages or even video calls don't fully capture. When possible, prioritize spending time with people in the same physical space. Having conversations face-to-face, sharing meals, taking walks together, doing activities side by side. This doesn't mean abandoning digital communication. It's a valuable tool, especially for maintaining connections when in-person interaction isn't possible. But when you have a choice, when you could either send a text or make a phone call, either have a video chat or meet in person, consider choosing the richer, more engaging form of interaction. Social connection is a fundamental human need, not a luxury or an add-on to a full life. It's an essential component of health, including brain health. Your relationships, your sense of belonging, your opportunities for meaningful interaction with others, all of these affect your cognitive function, your emotional well-being, and your overall quality of life. Investing time and energy in building and maintaining relationships is not selfish or frivolous. It's an investment in your health and happiness. As we approach the end of our gentle journey through the science of brain health, let's take a moment to gather together what we've learned. Your brain is not a static, fixed organ gradually wearing out like an old machine. It's a living, changing, remarkably plastic system that responds dynamically to how you live your life. Every choice you make, every habit you cultivate, every experience you have, shapes your brain's structure and function. The choices you make each day about sleep, movement, food, stress management, mental stimulation, meditation, and social connection are shaping your brain's health. This means you have more power than you might have thought to influence your cognitive health, to keep your brain sharp and resilient as you age, and to reduce your risk of cognitive decline. The beautiful truth is that this power doesn't come from expensive supplements or complicated interventions. It comes from relatively simple, accessible practices that support your brain's natural capacity for health and adaptation. These practices are things that are available to most people, things that don't require wealth or special circumstances, things you can start doing today if you choose. Sleep well, giving your brain the 7 to 9 hours it needs each night to consolidate memories, clear away waste, and restore itself. Create a sleep-friendly environment and routine that supports quality rest. Move your body regularly, aiming for at least 30 minutes of moderate aerobic exercise most days of the week. Find forms of movement you enjoy, whether that's walking, dancing, swimming, or any other activity that gets your heart rate up. Eat foods that support brain health. Include fatty fish rich in omega-3s, colorful fruits and vegetables packed with antioxidants, leafy greens full of brain-healthy nutrients, nuts and seeds, whole grains, and healthy fats like olive oil. Follow a Mediterranean-style dietary pattern most of the time. Engage your mind with challenging, novel activities that build cognitive reserve. Learn new things, whether that's a language, a musical instrument, a craft, or any other skill that stretches your abilities. Read challenging material, have stimulating conversations, solve problems, stay curious. Practice meditation or mindfulness regularly, even if just for a few minutes each day. This simple practice can reduce stress, improve attention, enhance emotional regulation, and literally change the structure of your brain in beneficial ways. Manage stress through exercise, meditation, social support, time in nature, deep breathing, and other stress reduction techniques. Pay attention to your thoughts and interpretations, and cultivate more balanced, realistic ways of viewing challenges. Nurture meaningful relationships and social connections. Invest time and energy in your relationships with family and friends. Join groups or communities based on shared interests. Volunteer. Seek out opportunities for face-to-face interaction and deep conversation. None of these practices requires perfection. You don't need to do everything right every day. You don't need to follow a rigid program or beat yourself up when you fall short. Small, consistent steps in these directions can accumulate over time into significant benefits. And perhaps more importantly, many of these practices are inherently rewarding. They don't just support brain health, they make life richer, more interesting, more connected, and more enjoyable. The science we've explored tonight tells us that the brain is resilient and adaptable, capable of positive change at any age. It tells us that simple, accessible practices can make a real difference in cognitive function. It tells us that we're not passive passengers as our brains age. We can be active participants in maintaining and even improving our cognitive health. As research in neuroscience continues, we'll undoubtedly learn even more about how to support brain health. But the fundamentals we've discussed tonight, sleep, exercise, nutrition, stress management, mental stimulation, meditation, social connection, these are likely to remain central to cognitive wellness. They're backed by decades of research and centuries of human wisdom. Perhaps the most important message is this: it's never too late to start taking care of your brain. Whether you're 20 or 80, whether you've lived a brain-healthy lifestyle, or are just now learning about these practices, positive changes can still make a difference. The brain's plasticity persists throughout life. Every day is an opportunity to nurture it. The relationship between you and your brain is perhaps the most intimate relationship you'll ever have. It's a partnership that lasts your entire life, from your first moments of awareness to your last breath. Your brain gives you consciousness, awareness, the ability to think and feel and love and dream. It allows you to perceive the world, to make sense of experience, to form memories, to imagine the future, to create meaning. In return, you can give your brain the care it needs to thrive. Quality sleep that allows it to maintain and restore itself. Regular movement that promotes the growth of new neurons and connections. Nourishing food that provides the building blocks it needs. Mental challenges that keep its circuits active and strong. Stress management that protects it from the corrosive effects of chronic cortisol elevation. Meditation that strengthens attention and emotional regulation. Social connections that engage it in the complex, rewarding work of relating to other minds. When you take care of your brain, you're not just preserving a biological organ, you're protecting your capacity to be fully yourself, to engage with the world, to maintain your independence and autonomy, to continue learning and growing, to remember your past and imagine your future, to connect with others and contribute to your communities. You're safeguarding the very thing that makes you you. So, as we come to the end of our exploration tonight, I want to thank you for taking this journey with me, for caring about your brain and being curious about how to support it, for being willing to learn, to consider new ideas, to think about how you might make changes, however small, that could benefit your cognitive health. Remember that knowledge is just the beginning. The real benefits come from putting that knowledge into practice, from making choices each day that support your brain's health and function. But don't let this feel overwhelming or like just another thing to add to an already overflowing plate. Start where you are. Do what you can. Be patient and compassionate with yourself. Every small step matters. Every positive choice contributes. Your brain is remarkable. It's been with you since before you were born, growing and developing, learning and adapting, creating the rich inner world of your consciousness. It will be with you for the rest of your life, shaping your experiences, enabling your relationships, making possible everything you do and feel and think. It deserves your care and attention. And with the simple, accessible practices we've explored tonight, you have the tools to provide that care. So tonight, as you settle into sleep, as your conscious mind quiets and your brain shifts into its nighttime rhythms, rest easy knowing that you have the power to influence your cognitive health. That simple practices, sustained over time, can make a real difference. That your brain is resilient and adaptable, capable of positive change. That every day brings new opportunities to nurture this extraordinary organ. You've done enough for today. You've learned, you've listened, you've considered how to care for your brain. Now it's time to rest, to let your brain do its nighttime work of consolidation and restoration. Tomorrow is another day, another opportunity to nourish and support your mind. Close your eyes now if you haven't already. Feel the weight of your body sinking into whatever surface supports you. Notice the gentle rhythm of your breath, flowing in and out, steady and calm, like waves lapping at a shore. Let your thoughts begin to soften and drift, like leaves floating down a stream. You don't need to hold on to anything. You don't need to remember or do or figure anything out. Your brain will take care of what needs to be taken care of while you sleep. The memories worth keeping will be strengthened and consolidated, woven into the fabric of your long-term knowledge. The waste products that accumulated during your waking hours will be cleared away by the glymphatic system, washing through your brain tissue like a gentle tide. The new connections sparked by today's experiences and learning will be refined and integrated into your neural networks. All of this will happen without any effort from your conscious mind. You can simply rest. And when you wake, whenever that may be, you'll have the chance to care for your brain in all the ways we've discussed tonight. To move your body, feeling the strength in your muscles and the expansion of your lungs. To nourish yourself with foods that support cognitive health. To engage your mind with something challenging or new. To connect with others in meaningful ways. To manage stress with compassion and skill. To sit quietly and meditate, even if just for a few minutes. Each day is an opportunity, a fresh start, a chance to support your cognitive health and to flourish, not just to prevent decline, to actively nurture your brain's vitality and function. But for now, there's nothing to do but rest, to sink into the soft darkness of sleep, to let go of the day and all its demands, to trust that your brain knows what to do. Sleep deeply and peacefully. Let the gentle rhythms of your sleeping brain wash over you like waves on a shore, steady, consistent, nurturing. Your brain is taking care of you right now, even as you drift away from consciousness. And you, by learning about brain health, by considering how to support it, by caring enough to spend this time listening, you're taking care of your brain in return. From the Sleepy Library, good night. May your sleep be deep and restorative, filled with peaceful dreams or gentle nothingness, whichever comes. May your brain clear away the day's debris and strengthen the connections that matter. May you wake refreshed and renewed, ready to support your cognitive health in all the gentle, accessible ways we've explored together tonight. Rest well, dream peacefully if dreams come, or rest in quiet darkness if they don't. And remember, your remarkable brain will be there when you wake, ready to help you think, feel, learn, remember, connect, and experience another day of this strange and beautiful journey of being human. Your brain, that 3-pound universe inside your skull, deserves your care, and now you know how to provide it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring about your mind and your health. Good night, sleep well, and may your brain thrive.